Hey guys, new video. Going to try to speed run this. I want to try to keep it under 10, 15 minutes if I can. A few things to go over. One is, are we topping? Are we rolling over? What's going on? I have made some posts about that recently. I am in a couple of alt trades currently, but I do see that we could be topping. I mean, we're going to look at that more closely here in a second. Just look at DXY, multiple things. So in this post here, I was talking about how AMMs need, market makers need liquidity. The closest liquidity is pushing it up first into 40, 41K, and then bringing it back down to grab all of the longs that were longing on the way up. So, that's one way to look at it. These are a couple of the alts that I entered. So I'm kind of hedging both ways. I've got some money on the side, but I've also got some alts that I purchased yesterday just in case things do go up. Here is Grayscale BTC, and it's running right into a fair value gap top here with where the order block is. So that's another thing I'm looking at. Bitcoin could just go sideways for a little bit, gain power, and move back up, or it could roll over because of something like this. And here's where I kind of got into that, how I didn't really like what I was seeing with money flow coming down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this has to happen. You'll get times where Bitcoin puts in a pattern like this and it just does a shallow dip. Maybe it just comes down to here and then pushes back up. So, it doesn't have to come down to the golden pocket, which is about, 30 to 31K. But just understand that there is a lot of liquidity that they're going to want to grab at some point down here. And a lot of times I am early on these calls. I think it's going to happen and then it takes longer to happen. So, at some point it is. I still think we're going to go up to 48K prior to halving, but I just don't know when that's going to happen yet. It's hard to predict these things. And then I'll show some Bitcoin dominance, things like that. And we'll get into few other coins. So here's Bitcoin. Looking at the macro picture, I just want to point one thing out. If you were to go back to 2017, the top, and drag a fib down to the bottom, the point at which we rejected on that first push up before halving is, it was between the golden pocket and the 0.75 here on the fib retracement. I don't really think we're going to have a move like this where it just dumps real hard. It could still happen before halving, but the way that we've methodically moved up is not the same as this big push right here. So I would suspect that any dips would be much more tame than this. And so considering this, if we check the retracement from the top of here to the bottom, that means we're getting close to the golden pocket. Here it kind of just pushed right through it and went to the 0.75. So yeah, I think you do have to leave it open that we could just push straight up to 48K after a little bit of a rest. So that's why I'm considering both things. I'm not saying that it's absolutely going to happen that we dip from here, just that Bitcoin is getting overheated and needs some kind of rest, even if that's sideways. If we look at money flow, I mean, we're looking at the weekly here. Money flow actually looks like it hasn't peaked at all. This is kind of just the first move on the weekly, sorry. If we look at a 2-day, I mean, there's a lot of these fair value gaps, these order blocks down here, a lot of liquidity. This is why I'm thinking we could still, come down here at least to, maybe this support at the purple line, which is right at 30K, or this upwards trend line. And let's say if you just go sideways for a bit, and from now to this point right here is what I'm thinking, till the end of December is when we can see that correction. But just think, well, what if you just went sideways for a while or even up, and then the correction happened up here and it came back down? So this is 48K roughly up here at this purple line. But at some point it is going to come down, and there's an imbalance here that was never covered on this big push up. But even here on the 2-day, I mean, it's going to do waves like we talked about before. you'll get a big money flow move where it goes red to green and then it comes down and then goes up. And once this peaks, and that would probably be the end of your bull cycle, but I mean, it's nowhere near doing that. This is just kind of like the first push up. And if you look at your daily, it is looking peaked. So now we're starting to talk about how you have declining momentum while money flow is coming up and while price is coming up. And that would be, I would consider that a bearish divergence, but it could still go sideways for a bit, or it could even go up a little bit more. I mean, you could do something like this on momentum. It could just curl up like that and money flow could stay up there. It doesn't happen that often, but it could. And I'll show you an example here in just a second. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. We're at the top of this rising wedge, and typically these do eventually roll over. And I'll show you one of these on Bitcoin dominance. But just real quick, here's a popular coin that I wanted to show. Let's see, that's the daily. I think this might have been on the 4 hours. A good example. Yeah, here we go. And you can see Zeph here was just pushing up harder and harder. And eventually it started putting in one of these rising wedges here. And these are bearish structures, although they're very bullish until they get to the top. And so what happened was money flow was peaking as momentum was coming down. Of course, it looked like it was coming down here, but it kept going a little bit longer. You'll get this big momentum, this money flow coming way up on these altcoins or Bitcoin. And then maybe it comes down and does one more push, and then that's your top. It doesn't really work out the same way exactly every time. Sometimes you get it peaking, and then there's a massive flush, and then it peaks one more time. They all act a little bit different. But this, I think, illustrates pretty well what I was just talking about with Bitcoin, where we are peaking, but it doesn't mean that it has to just roll over right now. It could. But, maybe it just money flow rolls down a little bit, does another high or an equal high, and then it rolls over. And I think that this amount of time right here gives us a good, about 30 days or so. We should know whether it's just going to push up higher to 48K or if it's going to roll over. Here is DXY. It's been falling pretty hard. It's basically just doing a falling wedge instead. And when you get these falling wedges, you have to watch out on DXY, because if it was to break out of the top here, then that's going to cause Bitcoin to come down. You see it all the time. And there's not really, well, yeah, I guess you could say, if we're considering what Zeph was showing a minute ago, we were looking at that. You could say that it's doing a smaller rising wedge, maybe. I don't really, there's not enough information here to really say that it's doing the exact same thing just yet. Everything's still very bullish, but it does seem like we're starting to get some wicks here. So that's the reason I put out that post yesterday, that I'm seeing some signs of weakness. It doesn't mean that it's done yet, obviously. You could just get a move from DXY here where it comes up a little bit and then falls further. That happens a lot. And then, crypto total market cap here, we've got a range that it's working in, had a deviation up, deviation down. It's really, if you go to the lower time frames on Bitcoin, it's kind of the same thing. But you have to think about market structure too. You're starting to see on the 4 hour that you're getting some lower highs. These were equal. This one's lower. So we would absolutely need to see, even though this is a higher low currently, we absolutely need to see a push back above this, and then a push back above this, to create a new, what would at least seem like a higher high when you're considering these two. Yeah, currently, I'd say like 38,250. I posted that yesterday. I think that's about the level that it needs to close a candle above. So if you get a 4-hour candle above, let me make sure that's right. Yeah, I'd say if you get a full 4-hour candle above 38,229, 38,250, and it's got to be a full candle. It can't just be a candle pushing up there because it could turn into a wick. So if you get that, I think you could feel pretty confident that things are going to push up again, minimum 41K. Maybe it goes all the way to 48K like it did in whatever that was, what did I say? July 2019, roughly. Okay, so here's the rising wedge for, let me shift this a little bit. This is the one for the Bitcoin dominance. And we know when things coil up, they have a big move at some point. And Bitcoin dominance, if it goes down, the whole crypto market goes up. So that's good for us. But in the short time frame, it could still kind of work in between this. And I've got a 1618 target of 56.21%. I mean, it's probably pretty close to where it should hit, but it doesn't have to come all the way up here. It could reject sooner. If that was to happen before the halving, we'd get a pretty big move. And maybe you'd call that, the major altcoin season #1, and then maybe there'd be another one after halving. I don't know. It doesn't always work out that way. We are starting to get, I'd say, less and less. And this is it's been pretty well documented that you can see here on money flow on a monthly chart for Bitcoin, it's slowly been going down. So we've been getting less volatile as time goes along. And I know there's multiple people saying, hey, we may only get to 70K. And some people saying we may only get to, 100K. I think it falls somewhere in between there. If I had to guess, I'd say about, I don't know, 90K or something. But, nobody knows what the top's going to be. One thing we do know is we just watch for the real bullish news. If an ETF is approved, if, what else? I don't know. I guess that's the major one to watch for. If you get some kind of ETF news or some big news from a major news source or something that says Bitcoin's going to, 250K and we're near the top here, maybe we've just pushed above it or something. I think you have to be careful with that. Remember back in, what was it right here? November, here it is, November 2021. Remember, this was the point that Elon Musk went on Saturday Night Live. This was the point where, Coinbase did its IPO. I think that was the IPO, or maybe the actual stock was launched. So anyway, you get really bullish news at that point, and maybe we didn't know at the time. Maybe it was your first bull run, but now we know. We understand what it looks like. You got people that you've never heard from, and or haven't heard from for years, telling you that they want to buy Bitcoin. They need you to tell them how to do it. We know those things are the times that it's profit-taking moments for you, for more experienced people. Okay, I had this request from somebody on Twitter, and I just wanted to go through these real quick. Let me get this one out of the way. I wanted to make this comparison. This is the total, I think this is total 3. Yeah, so this is basically all altcoins. This doesn't include Bitcoin or Ethereum. And we had a breakout. It is currently testing that breakout. There's a lot of imbalance here, just like we talked about with Bitcoin. It could still come down near at least halfway. Usually on a big move, you get 50% retracement. So this could just be a deviation above the, above the top here. So if you saw something like this on total 3, where it came back in, and especially if it rejected here, you wouldn't want to be in alts at this point. And this is what you would want to watch with multivac here. This was the request MTV. Looks very similar, right? I mean, it's kind of got the same structure, and then it broke out. You'd really want to just watch this uptrend line here. If you get a rejection there and it falls below it and does this, then of course you wouldn't want to be in it. Any close, 4-hour close below this trend line, or even if you get above here, if you get a close back below, just like we were talking about here, then you wouldn't want to be in it. You just need a clear breakout, which would be either a daily candle above this, either a daily candle. Well, let's just see what the 4-hour shows. Okay, so you need a 4-hour candle above 00152. I think that's right. Yeah, I think you'd feel pretty good about it at that point. I mean, it still needs to eclipse this deviation here, because it could still be a swing failure pattern if it went up here and rejected. So, I mean, you definitely don't want to buy a long there, or buy a resistance there. So ultimately, anyway, over 00164, if you got a 4-hour close above that, you'd be good. But I think this is really the resistance here. And then the other one, oh, well, let me look at money flow here. Yeah, it looks like it's just doing kind of a triangle formation here, and it'll break out one way or the other. There's not enough information here just yet, although currently it looks more bullish just because it got above the mean. This was kind of like the median line. It created a higher low, it got above, it retested, and now it's trying to push up. I think Astra did something like this where it just kind of worked its way up the triangle. That's what I would watch for. And then this is the other one they were asking for, QRDO. I've never looked at this one. So let's see, weekly money flow is still working its way up. Same for 2-day. Yeah, it doesn't look bad. I think it's still working itself out here, but on the daily, your VWAP looks like it could curl back up, and then that's when money flow could really get red to green. It's really not showing red to green just yet. On 4-hour, it will be. I mean, you could easily just go ahead and mark yourself a range on something like this. You do it on daily first. Always start at your higher time frame. Yeah, it looks like another deviation, just like the other one. Oops. Kind of hard to find that one. I think this is pretty close. I'm just trying to connect as many wicks and candle bodies as I can here. So it kind of swept the lows here. This is another one of those situations where you get a big move, especially if they're if it's a real fast move like this, always expect it's going to come down at least, 50% is usually the minimum, but sometimes it just comes down, about 38%. But this one clearly came down 65% to the golden pocket, which a lot of them do that too when they make a big move. But at minimum, usually going to get a 50% move back down to cover all of this imbalance, grab all of the longs that were, setting stop losses all the way up. MMs go down, grab that liquidity, and they're ready to send it back up. I don't really like that it's creating a lower high here. I think this one could still come back down, even though money flow is starting to go red to green. I mean, you definitely don't want to see a candle close below this area at the golden pocket. You can't have a 4-hour candle close below like 37.32. And I don't like that it's currently below the median line here, which if you grabbed your fixed range volume profile here, yeah, you had a move above and then it came back into it. I mean, a lot of the volume is right in here. See what that shows. Yeah, and so you could still come down to here, like 0.40, and get a bounce. I just haven't studied this one enough. I mean, it could be a cup and handle, I suppose. I don't really like that there's so much room down here is the problem. I mean, this order block was never tested again. It can always come back down. What's a good example here? So this one had kind of a cup. It's just a different kind of pattern. I mean, it's really difficult to determine on something like this. But notice how this one, you got your first bottom, and this is on multivac. So you got your first bottom, and then you came up and you kind of did a cup here. And then you came back down to test that order block on all this imbalance. Let's just see what, bet that's like a 1618 move, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. I just don't know. I mean, it's really risky to play this one, in my opinion, just because this happens a lot where it goes back up to test this first move and has a swing failure pattern where there's a big wick. And that's exactly what happened here on multivac. Yeah, I would just be careful with this one. I mean, it could still go up. I don't know. I just don't want to give any advice on this one, nor is any of it advice, as far as financial goes. I'm just showing you the way I would play things. I mean, there's better coins than this one, in my opinion, as far as the way they look. A lot of times when you get a W move, you end up getting an M right on top of it. And maybe it just stops here and then pops back up. I don't know. It's just not worth it to me. There's probably better ones. All right, here's Space. This is a real good project. I had posted about this a couple of times and thought it could stop here, but at the 0.50, but it actually did roll back over onto the golden pocket. And I'm not saying it's done, but for people that were waiting on it to come down, this is a pretty good buy down here for long-term hold. But clearly money flow is still in the red on the hourly, so there's no bullish divergences or anything just yet. It created one here, but that was already wiped out because you got a lower low here. So the idea might be that it just goes sideways and then bounces off of this uptrend line here that it's created. And if you get above the top of this box here at 26 or 27 with a 4-hour candle, then you're moving back up most likely. Could reject here temporarily and even here, but slowly it would make its way up. And then these are a couple of plays I did just yesterday that I was talking about where just for fun, I was going to see which one of these could hit $1 first because they're very similar structures. They had a breakout and retest. This is Kava, this is KDA. Of course, I I don't want to be, actually my stop loss is wrong on this. I wouldn't want to be in these if it got below this deviation here. And same on this one, it's pretty much the same structure. I'm hoping it just finds some support here and moves up. I mean, typically when you have a sharp move down like this, it did give us our 50%. It's probably a golden pocket move. Yeah, it came up into the golden pocket, but this is an M. I'm hoping that it creates a W here and at least moves back up, probably like the 86-cent area on this one. And then, golden pocket retracement here, just like this one, hoping to see a W formation here. Although this one doesn't look as clear. Let me see. Yeah, it could still hold here. And at the very minimum, a move back up to 68. But anyway, these are short-term moves. Money flow and RSI look pretty good, although they are all curling down. And the daily's trying to curl the red money flow back up. And it's getting a little bit thinner here. So low time frames, it's still, just going sideways. May take it some time, but I definitely have targets that would invalidate it, like I talked about just a second ago. And here's just an RSI look. An EMA look for the 200 here on that total 3, excluding BTC and ETH. If it was to come down, this would be the first target, right at about 372 billion. And that's a move of it's roughly a 10% move from there. So, you could expect if something like that happened, alts would at least come down 10%, most of them. Ones that have gone up big could come down, 30, 40, 50%. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to get into. Yeah, just check my Twitter if you got any other questions. I'll post some of these charts on here as well. And, it's bike for sale. All right, you have a good one.